You're going to work hard for success. How do you want it to feel? I want to feel satisfied, joyous, fulfilled as I'm doing it. I don't want to make myself suffer and grind and feel no life as I'm doing it.
What I found for freedom for me with my identity was I'm going to build my identity on who I'm fighting to become rather than who I've been or even who I am right now. Because who I am is static, but who I'm becoming is dynamic.
Don't ever believe you need to have anyone's permission or enthusiasm or understanding to do your thing.
All right, come on, let's go.
All right, let's
you guys
go.
ready?
Let's go.
So we're going to have a conversation, and I cannot believe I'm sitting here with Brendon Burchard.
I can't believe I get to do this with you. It's a thrill and an honor. Thank you.
It's so much fun. Your talk today was so comprehensive and insightful and tactical, where you actually give us steps. And I'm just really thankful for that. You know, one of the things that's kind of an anomaly about you, and we'll dive into some conversations, is that, you know, I think you know this, that you're at first experience, you're like an electrical fire, right? You know, you're just massive energy. And I think what happens is that we go, oh, we're going to get so motivated and so inspired. But that's just the appetizer. You motivate us and inspire us, but very, very quickly, you actually move into a very challenging mode where you're pressing us. I felt like you're incredibly invasive, right?
So does my wife.
That's different, bro. And you go into our fears, our apathy. You press into us at multiple levels of weakness and strength. And I noticed that you do that very fast. You go right from motivation to challenge. But then you do something else. You're incredibly therapeutic. Like, right, did you feel that? You have this incredible like healing frequency where all of a sudden it's like, Brendon, get out of my soul. You know, you're seeing all my wounds and brokenness. And I came to be inspired. Now I'm going home and having to reflect on the deep wounding that I have in my life. And very few people are able to do something like that so quickly, but it doesn't even end there. Then you move into this very strategic mode where you start breaking down reality and guiding us from where we are to where we want to go. And I just want to tell you, I think you're very, very rare. And the way that you took us through that process is so exceptional that I can see why you're considered the most significant, prolific, optimal performance coach in the world.
Thank you. This is very kind.
And so I just think it's a real gift to have you. But one of the things you talked about was identity. And I thought we should go back and unearth a little bit of that. Because as you talked about all these different aspects of finding or creating meaning in our life, it felt to me that there was a gravitas around identity that was really significant. And it's identity is one of those words where we all hear it, but I don't know if we all know what it means. And could you kind of take us back a little bit and give us like a fundamental framework for what our identity is, how it develops, and how it shapes our sense of meaning?
Ooh, yes. First, that's very kind. I feel the same about you, watching you this morning. And many of you know I listen to him on Sundays, and the perspective shift and the elevation of how I view life and spirit and faith has a lot to do with listening to you. So thank you for having me. This is really special. Identity is, who do you think you are? Where do you think you fit? And how do you feel about it? That's identity. Who do you think you are? Where do you think you fit? And how do you feel about it? And you can apply lots of labels that you've gathered throughout your life because culture gives us a lot of that. Oh, well, you're Erwin. You're from here. You fit in this caste, this level, this place, you know, this culture. But the how do you feel about it? that's a very particular and individual thing. And when I do give my speeches, I'm always attentive to, there's people in the audience right now feeling great about themselves. And there's other people in the audience feeling incredibly dispirited and discouraged and down. And I want to talk to everybody. And so I'm always attentive to use examples in that full range of human experience, because I also know that our identities truly and surprisingly shift in different contexts. Mm-hmm. People, when you think about yourself in the future, your identity might be a little different. We know from psychology and research that people's actual measured personality changes dramatically over time. Mm-hmm. They tend to be anchored around times in which there's change. You had a significant shift in your personality when you left your parents' house or went to school or to college. It shifted again when you had to fit in at your first job. It shifted again when you got married. It shifted again when you became a parent. It shifted again when you retired. And literally measurably, people's personalities change over time, especially with those different epochs. So knowing that, I get excited about it because I go, oh, if that's true, these things happen to us and we can shift our personality. Wouldn't it be cool if we just decided to do that consciously versus letting context do it to us? Mm. If context can do it to us, well, our consciousness can do it for us. Mm-hmm. And so I get excited about the topic of identity because so many people, it's like, the fixed mindset versus growth mindset. Mm-hmm. I think identity is fixed for a lot of people. Mm-hmm. And then something shifts, something breaks, or they become more conscious and they choose to elevate that perception of self and how they feel about themselves. And all of a sudden it feels like it's like a different person. And even though it's the same person with the same history, even with the same habits, but all of a sudden this person's like different. Mm-hmm. And when you meet somebody who's shifted like that and they're a little different, especially when they're more alive now, because they're more in alignment with their best human nature. Mm-hmm. And you meet that person, there's a sparkle in their eye, there's a wonder about them, they're an attractive personality, they're someone you want to hang out with because they're good in their identity. Their identity is true for them. There's an authenticity and an alignment with them. And most people, they don't start out that way. Mm-hmm. We have to do the personal development to get to that human nature.
Yeah, I think one of the things that happens oftentimes is, well, I mean, what I hear you saying, and I saw this image in my mind that we're all walking through a house of mirrors. But every reflection is a slight different reflection of who we are and how people see us. But I remember when I was around 15 years old in Miami, Florida, we had decided to move to North Carolina. And I just finished my sophomore year of high school, and I was 14. And I felt really anemic. I felt really insecure. I felt invisible and powerless. And I made a decision. We're moving to North Carolina at the end of August. And I'm going to change who I am before I get to Raleigh because no one knows me.
Yeah.
Because one of the hard things about changing is when people know who you've been, they don't see who you're becoming. Uh-huh. And so I did all these really practical things, like I worked out like 4 or 5 times a day. I became super strong, became far more athletic, but I also changed my inner narrative. I told myself, this is who you are. This is not who you are. So I moved to North Carolina. I actually almost like took on a whole new personality. I became a very different person. I made sure right away on the football team, I punched somebody in the face, and just to state how tough I was. And I created a persona of being more aggressive and tough when before I was fearful and weak. And it was really interesting. I mean, I was not a person of faith, but I somehow realized that how I saw myself and how people saw me, there was almost like this seesaw kind of relationship where you see yourself how people see you, but people see you the way you see yourself, and it kind of goes back and forth. Mm-hmm. And I thought one day I'll know who I really am, because when you do something like that, you're not really sure who you are anymore. And I thought, when I'm 30, I'll know who I am. When I'm 35, I'll know who I am. And there came a certain point where I told myself, It doesn't matter who I am, it matters who I'm becoming. Because who I am is static, but who I'm becoming is dynamic. And I think there's something powerful in identity. I think there's something fragile in identity when it's just around who am I. I think there's something dynamic in identity when it's around who am I becoming. And then a part of the magnetic tension is, you ever go home for holidays and everyone remembers who you used to be, and so you end up becoming who you were? Yes. I think there's a magnetic pull. Some people will always see you as you were. And we tend to see ourselves as we're becoming. And somewhere in between, there's the reality of who we are in this moment. But what I found for freedom for me with my identity was, I'm going to build my identity on who I'm fighting to become, rather than who I've been or even who I am right now. Because I never really measure up to who I want to be. But you had this one little third part where you said it's how you feel about yourself, which seems to me the most volatile part. Right? The first two feel like they have a little more foundational capacity. This third one, how I feel about myself, is it Tuesday? Right? And I feel differently on Tuesday than I do about myself on Thursday. How do you deal with how you feel about yourself being so influential in your identity?
I think it's important. You've all heard that phrase, don't take yourself too seriously. What that means is, don't have such a hard circle around your perception of self. That who you are has more dynamicism to it than you would imagine. Because what we don't want is this defined box of who you are. Because the more strong those lines are, the more easy it is for you to break. And when you realize that, it's like, oh, what I need to be is not this defined box. What I need to be is centered. I need to feel centered in myself. Not perfect, not the defined box, not their label, not my hope, not my dream. I just, in this moment, I need to find a centering in myself, in my nature, in my spirit as it is right now. Because if we can get there, we can feel really good about life. If we have to always fit into a category, into what they say, into how I think I have to be, we're going to have more disorder there. We're going to be easily disrupted there. We're not going to be like the light sprite tree that can bend in the wind. We're going to be rigid in self. And if we're super rigid in self, that's where you meet people who get the label stubborn. They're stubborn. They're strict in self. They will not change. They won't be open to anything. And most people who are really stubborn struggle their whole lives until they learn to be more dynamic in conception of self. And I really believe that if we don't understand how important that question is, how do I feel about myself? That's an incredibly important question. We don't always have to be rah-rah and feel perfect and great. But if on average we feel terrible about ourselves, we can't be shocked that the outcome in our life is not good. And we can't be shocked that other people are not attracted to our identity. We can't be shocked that opportunities aren't being attracted to us because we're in disorder and misalignment and negativity with ourselves. And we've all had that friend, and we've all been that probably. I know you and I both suffered with those darker shadows. We've both had those times where we didn't like ourselves. And sometimes that was last week. So it's not that anyone attains some spiritually enlightened perfection where they always feel good about themselves. In fact, a lot of people, I'm sure yourself included, you're hard on yourself sometimes because you know what you're capable of becoming. You know your divine nature. And so what we have to do as humans is emotionally self-regulate so that I can give myself grace, stay centered, and be acknowledging of myself in such a way that I feel good about life. I tell people all the time, if your identity's good, Mondays are good. If you're not good, no Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday is not good. Nothing's good. And so we have to find that sense of self, but that's the edict of my entire career and philosophy, generations before both Erwin and I, was know thyself. And that's one of the hardest things to ever do, to know yourself, How do you do that? Well, what are the labels I use for myself? What are the preferences that I really have? Where do I feel like I fit in? And where do I want to fit in? And at some point as a conscious adult, how am I going to choose to feel about myself? I'm very, very proud of myself. And I don't say that in a negative pride type or a self-impressed. I'm really proud that this young kid from this town that grew up in poverty, that got beaten up so much, was so physically abused, who had so many challenges in his life. His mom was an immigrant who English was her third language. His dad worked at the DMV, who, never knew a lot about the world. I'm proud that I speak to the world now. I can't believe that little Brendon kid is up here with Erwin, Raphael, McManus. I'm like, wow. So I'm good at giving my identity is positive and big and expansive because I'm kind of wowed by what God gave me. I'm kind of wowed, like I got these chances. I'm kind of wowed by this whole moment. I'm easily awed by what is happening in my life, not just now, but as I was going. I have reverence for it. If you have reverence for the things you've been given, you're more self-accepting and you just feel good in your skin. Mm-hmm. When you don't have reverence for what you've been given, you fight yourself. And when you're fighting yourself, life is hard enough to take on another battle against yourself.
One of the things you did, and I don't even think it was a part of your main presentation, but you started saying things like, everyone in my Rolodex is a great person. Like everyone, there's just so many good people out there. Everyone I know is good. And as I'm listening to describe the world, I'm having two thoughts. One is, how many people describe the world the way you're describing the world? Mm-hmm. I think most people would say, there's a lot of bad people out there. A lot of violence out there. There's a lot of danger out there. And what I loved is, whether you intended to or not, what you were actually revealing to us is who you are. Because I am absolutely convinced that we find who we are. And I think the reason you're finding so many good people is because you're actually a good person. And the reason you're finding so many optimistic people is because you're an optimistic person. And the reason you're finding a beautiful world is because, well, Brendon, you're a beautiful human. And it was just such a reinforcement to me of the world is who you are. Mm. And there is a magnetic, gravitational pull that when you travel around the world and you are a certain kind of person, you draw a certain kind of people to you. And they hear your frequency, and pessimistic people don't hear your optimistic frequency, even if they're in the room. But optimistic people probably find you all over the world. People who believe in a beautiful world find you. I
know this is true for you too, because you were talking on Epiphanies this morning.
Yeah.
And you all know Erwin's this big thinker. And everywhere he goes, he attracts the big thinkers. He attracts the innovators. He attracts the leaders, because that's who you are. Mm-hmm. And you've decided that that's important to you, and that is who you are. You attract that. I think that's very true. It doesn't prevent you from seeing the other things, though, too, because you also, as you are that big thinker, you have to work with everyone who might not be.
Yeah.
Right? It's frustrating, right? When your identity and your calling and your sense of your center does not align with those around you, we get in that's a lot of the conflict of the world. I'm mad that your preference isn't like my preference. I'm mad that you're not like me. I'm mad that you don't think like me. And I think what really elevates so much of our life experience is in those moments where you can do both. I'm an optimistic person, but I didn't begin that way. I trained myself. I'm an optimistic person, but I train a lot of people who are more negative, more upset, more critical, more bitter, more frustrated, more hurt, more angry. And that's just part of understanding that when you understand that entire spectrum of human identity, now you understand that whole spectrum, from whether people call it good or happy or positive, to bad or negative, from big thinking to small thinking, from the greats to the less thans, wherever you put it, that whole spectrum, there's suffering there.
Yeah.
There's hurt.
It seems to me when you're looking at people, I almost think that when you see negative people, you think there's been identity theft. That who they're supposed to be is optimistic and positive. They're supposed to see the world as good and beautiful. And you're trying to steal their identity back and say, someone stole the best version of you somewhere along the way, and I'm here to help you find it. And so there is something incredibly, not just empowering, but hopeful in the way that you speak to us. Because I'm sitting there going, yeah, I believe in me, if Brendon can be proud of himself, I can be proud of myself, right? You feel that a little bit, like, right? Because how many were awkward going, I'm not proud of myself yet, but I do think you give us permission to like ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is more valuable than people think.
I agree. I think when people are really hard on themselves, I want to share something you shared backstage when we were talking.
That was private.
Okay. People come up to Erwin from around the world and go, "Do you remember me?" And what did you say? You said back to them?
Oh no, I said that in the main group. I said, people come up and say, "Do you remember me?" I don't even remember myself, right?
Right. They say to him, "Do you remember me?" He says, "I don't even remember myself." And I think once you realize that, how little you actually know yourself, and you were talking about reflection this morning, how little people actually self-reflect. It's funny because they're so sure of themselves when they are right or they're in a fight. They're very, very self-righteous, very self-righteous, but often very unexplored.
Yeah.
And I think if you can realize that, wait, maybe you actually don't know yourself so supremely. The second you can step into that, I think you step into curiosity, as you talked about this morning. I think you step into learning, but I think the most important thing is you step into humility. People ask me all the time, "Brendon, what do you think of this?" And I go, "I don't know. Let me contemplate that." I don't have to be immediate with my answer. I don't have to be sure instantaneously. And I think that's really a powerful thing, because I also know that I'm becoming and I'm learning and I can change opinion. And because I don't believe I have to be fixed as one thing. People always, my number one thing people say is, "Do you ever have a bad day?" I'm like, yes. I mean, I'm shocked that people would even ask the question.
You just made this day bad. No.
Do you ever just have a terrible day? Yes. Just not 2 in a row. And it's like, because I realize that, you can have a bad morning, but you don't have to have the bad evening.
Yeah.
When we understand that we are interpreting the world.
Yeah.
That we can really radically shift that to say, this was a bad morning. Those things really did happen. You don't have to be Pollyannish about it. Life is difficult. And you can look at that and you can still say, life was really difficult today. I'd still like to end it feeling well. I'd still like to end it feeling well. I'm going to take that nice warm shower, that hot bath. I'm going to take a nice evening walk without my phone and just kind of breathe it out a little bit. It wasn't how I wanted to feel today, but I get to decide who I am. They judged me today, but I'm sleeping with my mind tonight. I'm going to let them have their perception of my identity, but I'm going to sleep in the truth. I know what's important to me. I know I'm not perfect, but I'm trying. I'm proud of myself for trying, because tomorrow they're going to judge me and they're going to be stale in that judgment. I'm going to wake up a new man ready to go.
Love that. Something that really occurred to me this week, or I feel like I saw at a clearer level than I had in a long time, is I've always known that when people use absolute language, it's a sign of unhealth. When someone says "you always," or every time, or "you never," like you can't. It's kind of impossible to have a conversation with absolutes. But what really struck me was that there are people who have absolute narratives internally, and that's what keeps them from growth. Because if you have if you are from absolutes internally, you're either a good person or a bad person. You're either a good husband or a bad husband. You're either a good parent or a bad parent. And if you have those absolutes, it's impossible to change, because if you're a terrible human being, you can't change because you're a terrible human being. That's who you are. Mm-hmm. And if you're a great human being, you don't need to change because you're already great. Mm. I think when we live in a more honest space where you go, I like who I'm becoming, but I've got stuff, or I'm a husband who wants to be a great husband, and I've had a lot of bad husband moments. I'm a dad who really loves my kids and has wanted to be a great dad, but I've had bad dad moments. And I think I'm a good leader and who has bad leadership moments. And if you can actually live with the tension of it, I think you have room for growth. Mm-hmm. But if you have to have absolutes confirmed on you, that's when you can't grow. Then you're either a victim mm-hmm. or you're the hero, and you're never the student. And I think that one of the things I really like about you is that you talked about your hair, and and I can't remember the phrase you used, but and how comfortable you are with yourself. It's almost like you're comfortable with yourself, not because you're ignoring your flaws, but because you just learn to enjoy your flaws mm-hmm. and appreciate them and see them as a part of your uniqueness. So on behalf of 8 billion people on the planet, how did you become so comfortable with yourself?
I think at some point you have to realize, and I'll answer the question personally. I became comfortable with myself because I realized as a young man, I was too easily hooked by other people. Mm. I was too easily disrupted internally. I had a lot of internal disruption. The kind, like the day's going good, and then all of a sudden impatience like roars. And I grew up around a lot of anger. And so people were just very angry, very violent where I grew up. And so I was like, I don't want to feel like that. I don't like that energy that is that impulsive, negative, hurtful energy to me or towards any other people. And I was like, I'm going to have to condition that out. Mm. And I'm going to have to start with not getting hooked by other people, not letting things stress me out. I always teach that almost all stress is self-manufactured. And almost all stress...
Give me a minute, okay?
But no, you're going to like the second part's way more profound.
It's not the profound part, it's the painful part. So you're saying... I've manufactured all the stress in my life. Thank you, Brendon. And I think I just go home now. But okay, keep going. Give us part two.
Almost all stress is self-manufactured. And most of it is rooted in time. Very rarely are you stressed without the context of time. You have stress and anxiety because of time for a lot of people. You all experienced this when you went to school and you had an essay that was due on a Friday, mm-hmm. and the teacher said, I forgot to give you guys this other written assignment. That essay, it's not due till Monday now. You were like, yes! And it's still due. It's still the same number of pages. It's still hard to do, but you got one more day and you felt like you were just granted freedom. All the stress went away when I gave you one more day. And so most of our stress, we have a time box of when things have to happen. And I realized I wasn't good with myself because I had this time problem. I felt I had to be, if I was angry at myself, or I was hooked, or I was impatient or something, it was like, I got to be perfect now, or I have to fit in now, or I have to get this. And I was like, oh, if I just expand my time horizon and I give myself space and grace, now I can be good with myself. Maybe I look stupid on that one video. I'm like, I'm going to shoot a lot of videos. A lot of people say, I look stupid in that video. Oh my God, I can't shoot any more videos because I look stupid. I go, I look stupid in that video. I'm going to shoot a lot of videos. There's a lot of odds that I'm going to look better in one of them. Space and grace. Yeah. Not having to be perfect right now. not having to say all the right words right now. We're doing an interview.
Yeah.
I'll do thousands of more interviews where I'll be smarter, better looking, happier. I don't know. Or I won't get them right. I think when you take your pressure off of yourself and the labeling off of yourself in the moment, you learn to just be. And that's what's hard for people. They're stressing themselves so they don't experience being. And when you can remove that stress and you can remove that time and you can remove that judgment, I'll say it again, when you remove the stress, when you remove the time, and you remove the judgment, now you get to dance in being a little bit. And so my being is pretty free from the time. It's pretty free from judgment. The nice thing you and I have, and many of you in this audience too, as leaders, we've already been called all the names.
That's true.
No one's gonna come up with a new judgment or label. I mean, I've had the most inventive things thrown at me, and you have too.
Yeah.
And once you've led for a while, you're like, I've been called it all. I'd better just be who I am.
All the criticisms are proof of human creativity.
Yeah. Yeah, you've already been called, yeah, you're crazy, you're this, you're trying to be that. Once you've been labeled by everybody else, you finally go, okay, who do I want to be? And I'm going to act from that place of being without concern of their judgment. And when you get in that place, it's a whole, like people can see it on you. They see freedom in your eyes. And when people see freedom in your eyes, that's a different level of relationship they want to have with you.
Love that. Now, there's several people, and I imagine many who are going to be listening to this, who also like lead teams, run companies, have high pressure lives and responsibilities. You've built a massive organization. I mean, you've generated, I don't know, tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. And if you would like to be specific, that'd be great. And you work, I listened to your schedule. You're not chilling. Like you work hard. You're almost, I would say, compulsive. And in terms of your drive, you seem to be incredibly ambitious. You cannot achieve what you achieve without ambition. So how do you flip that and go, okay, how do you build like great teams and excellence and accomplish so much and at the same time deal with that kind of dynamic you're talking about being at peace with yourself and not being impatient? Like, are you more impatient with yourself than you are with people? Are you never impatient with people and only impatient with yourself? Yeah. How does it play out organizationally while you're trying to strive for something? Because to accomplish anything great takes tremendous discipline and work and intention and standards. So are you dropping the standard to elevate the happiness? Or are you keeping the standard and finding a way to also elevate the happiness for your teams?
Oh, that's a great question. First, when my wife hears this, she'll laugh because if I was compulsive, I'd be more consistent. So I don't think I'm a compulsive person. I think I've allowed and found what I really enjoy. I'm a writer first, I'm a teacher second, I'm a coach third. I know it's in that order of passion. Those are the things I spend my time, probably equally across those things. I really, and you can ask my team who's here, like, I enjoy my life.
I meant compulsive as a compliment.
Oh, right. That's true.
You know, that you get up in the morning and you have to do something.
Yeah. No, I'm a...
You don't feel that way?
No.
You don't wake up in the morning
going... Oh my God, I would be your best... I'm so chill. Y'all, have you had a pina colada before? I would be your best friend on a beach, sitting there having pina colada. You're like, this Brendon, he can chill. I'm not that guy. I can chill. I'm from Montana. We can hang out. I will go into that stream and I will fly fish for 9 hours, catch nothing, and I had the best day. Like I don't need a lot of. I don't have that compulsive, must go, big ambition. I think what gives it that edge is, I teach all my clients this, the real job one, the hardest job, is to summon the best of who you are every day. Not summon the best of who you are 24/7 every day, but to touch that helm, every day to summon the best of who you are. And so I try to think, how do I do that? Okay, well, I've got this moment with Erwin today. I'm going to go backstage and I'm going to go to the bathroom and do some qigong and breath work and get myself in a good place to try to talk to my friend. Mm-hmm. And so I'm doing the things to put myself in the best place that I can be in. And I do that every day. And so just the outcome of that is that things just start turning out well, and you just keep summoning the best of who you are. And I tell people that a lot of time, a lot of my ambition was given to me. And I don't mean like an on-high calling. It means like the path revealed itself as I faithfully walked being the best of who I could be. I didn't have a 5-year plan or a 50-year plan. Every day I try to do the best of what I can do in the things that I love to do: writing, teaching, and coaching. I try to do my best at those 3 things in my professional life. Mm-hmm. And what happened was, along the way, that eventually got really rewarded. And, it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. But I wasn't like, I'm going to, have a unicorn outcome. I wasn't like, I'm going to earn a certain amount. I was like, I just really want to be a good writer. I really want to be a good teacher. I really want to be a good coach. And so I think the intention of being the best of who you can be each day in whatever you do that you love is important. And I also, like I said, I gave myself the freedom of that. I quit a job that wasn't those 3 things. I stopped hanging around people who I felt detracted from those 3 things. So I found out what I naturally aligned with, I loved, and what my passions were, and it took a long time. But once I found those, I was like, I'm gonna do more of those. And so I think it looks like he's so prolific. And I'm like, actually, it looks like that because I'm aware that I suck at everything else but those 3 things. I'm terrible. I can't cook. I suck on the golf course. I can't sail a boat. A lot of the fancy rich people that I work with, I can't do any of the stuff that they like. I don't have fancy cars. I don't like driving the cars. I mean, I'm just fairly a boring person. I want to read books in the day. I want to write something. I want to teach something online or in person. I want to coach my clients. And the rest of the time, I want to be awesome to my wife and to my family. So I just share all that because when you look back at it, it's like, whoa, all he did. But all I actually did is say, what do I really enjoy? And let me bring the best of who I can to that enjoyment each day. Mm-hmm. And the gates just kept opening.
It's funny because with a lot of young entrepreneurs especially, it seems like a consistent pattern is that there's something that pushes them and something that pulls them. And early on, it's almost like 80% something pushing them and 20% something pulling them.
I think that's true.
What's pushing them is, I grew up poor, I'm never going to be poor again. We never had a home, I'm going to buy a home. I felt insignificant, I'm going to be significant. I never had anything, I'm going to have everything. And that just pushes them. And it's usually a negative energy that's pushing them. And then they start getting something that pulls them, like intention or vision or good they can do in the world or a talent that the world desperately needs. And one of the things I began to notice is that if they don't make that transition from 80-20 pushing to pulling to 20-80, where almost everything is pulling them, they actually crash and burn. Mm-hmm. And what I'm actually hearing from you is you don't have anything pushing you, you have everything pulling you. You're not running from anything, you're not trying to escape anything, you're not even like trying to pursue fame or wealth or power or stuff. You're just trying to do the things you love that you think make the world better. So you're in a complete being pulled mode rather than being pushed and pulled mode, which I think is quite extraordinary.
Thank you.
Which means it's humanly possible, because if there's one, there can be 1,000,001. No.
I'll say thank you on that, and I'll qualify it with the blessing that happens at some point in your life when you have a lot of pull is then you also end up with all of the right people around you who push you. Like, I have teammates who push me. I have industry friends who push me and challenge me. And I always tell people this, the tell of whether or not you're living a conscious life is whether currently today is everything you're dealing with in terms of your challenges, or all the challenges you're facing in your life right now, did those happen to you? Or did you choose any of them? So if all the challenges and problems you have in your life, just life threw at you, randomness threw at you, bad people threw at you, difficult circumstances, and all of your challenges are circumstantial, the world put it at you, that's one level of life. It's unconscious, it's reaction. The other level of life is conscious, where you chose your challenges. That's the stuff of personal development, isn't it? That's the stuff of leadership. That's the stuff of self-improvement. That's the expansive nature of our spirit. When you purposely challenge yourself, meaning you push yourself, or you find other people who push you, now it's different. It's not a psychological deficiency that's pushing you. It is an ambition or a purpose, and it's people at your side and at your wings who are pushing you to do good, to climb, to succeed, to serve more. That's when it gets interesting.
Yeah.
And I love being around people like that. They are pushed, but they're pushed by others, or they're pushed by an intent to serve. Because I would share what I think about the difference between that 80-20. When do people switch that from 80% negative push, if you will, or what I would call the deficiency drive, into more of the pull, the purpose drive? It's almost always that linchpin, if you will, that hook, that switch. It's the switch of service. You'll always be pushed by inadequacy or not enough or something you're fighting against when it's in your own world. But when you switch into a moment of service, you say, I want to help people. When you say, I want to help people, that's the ultimate pull. Right? That's what Jesus did when he was on earth. He helped people. And so we have this, I think, truly symbolic and iconic and important role model there. It's like, when these acts of service is what opens you to something new. And that was a moment in history when everything changed as well. Not just in terms of spiritual or religious faith, but in terms of human narrative. Like the Bible itself was a brand new invention of narrative. That type of narrative had never actually been done before. And so it's an empowering story when you realize, if I can connect to service, if I connect to this idea, I can help people. The pull is there for you on Mondays. I know that's why you and I are friends. It's like, I see your spirit and service to the world. You're going to fly across the country to speak to a couple hundred more people, to try to inspire them, try to get them to think bigger, try to tap into their genius and be creative. And you've spent decades of your life trying to expand people's consciousness and their spirit and their faith. And it's that acts of service that pull you, because you've seen the result of those acts of service. And that's a different kind of pull, and you have that.
Yeah, what's so funny is that I'm at the place in my life where no one really expects anything more from me. It's like, if I tapped out, people go, "Yeah, we get it." It's like, and I'm probably the singular person who I feel like I'm in my own personal social experiment. I want to see how beautiful of a life I can actually live. I want to see if I can really become an optimal version of myself, how much good I can do. Can you make a seismic shift in human history by investing in people? Like those are the things that really like drive me and motivate me every day, going, can we really affect the world in such a way that 1,000 years from now, humanity is actually different by what we do today? And that actually excites me. I think, you can have two very different solutions to the same problem, right? People talk about, the climate crisis and how we need to save the planet, and that we need to save the planet. Elon Musk says, let's just go colonize a new planet, right? His solution is, let's go to Mars, right? And I think there are people who try to solve problems for today, which I think are wonderful, because we need problems solved today. And I think the way I've always designed was, I'm trying to solve problems for 1,000 years from now, because I actually think the human story plays itself out on a larger canvas than we think, because Westerners tend to think in terms of one lifetime.
Yes.
And Easterners tend to think in terms of thousands of years. And I think that the way, God designed me was, try to answer questions that will help humanity for the next 1,000 years. And that actually drives me. It wakes me up in the morning going, that's such a fascinating possibility that we could impact the world, make it better for generations to come. But you did say something that really impacted me earlier. And it impacted me not intellectually, but I think at my core. When you said, how many things do you have to go through before you give yourself permission to give yourself grace? You guys remember that? And when you said that, it was like I don't think you meant it like that. Maybe you did, and but it was like a punch to the gut. And and the question just started echoing in my soul. How many things do you have to go through before you allow yourself to give yourself grace, or however you said it?
What else? Yeah.
What else
do you have to go through before you give yourself credit? What else do you have to go through before you can feel good? What else do you have to go through before you allow yourself joy or grace or confidence or fulfillment? And a lot of people, they never just go, yeah, I can grant that to myself now. I've been through a lot. I've survived a lot of things. I can care for myself now. I've survived a lot of things. I can even be really appreciative or proud or fulfilled by myself. And a lot of people, they never even investigate that until the latter years of their life when they're in hospice.
Yeah.
And they start asking the questions. Am I happy with myself? Am I happy with my life? Did I do it right? And unfortunately, for a lot of people, that's instigated by regret. They're regretting the time they have left and what they did with the time they did have previously. And I think that a lot of conscious people instead say, can I find a way to give myself the grace now that I'm going to give myself later? Can I find a way? And a lot of people don't like this phrase I use a lot, and it's definitely not clickbait, because everyone says the opposite on social media, and a lot of them come to me for coaching later on, because I'll just give you the phrase that I believe. I believe we can learn and we should train ourselves to strive satisfied. To strive satisfied. To be happy and fulfilled and satisfied and even, yes, comfortable with how we are in this moment, how we feel today. As people say, don't get comfortable. I'm like, what do you want me to get? Never be satisfied. I'm like, never? That sounds like an absolute. That sounds like, so why am I working so hard if I never get to be satisfied? Well, if you ever get satisfied, you'll stop trying and growing. I'm like, what evidence do you have for that? Who taught you that? Who told you have to be fueled by you're not enough forever? Where did that come into our parlance? I've strived satisfied, and I'll tell you as a very tactical way, for a very long time, and I know this won't resonate with everybody, but my lifelong ambition financially, because we all have different financial goals and different numbers. I remember Brian Tracy, he's one of the greats of our industry. He taught a lot about goals and psychology and personal development. And Brian said you need to know your number. Know your number financially. You got to know that number. What's the number where you feel good, you made it? And he taught it in a different way than I thought about it. I was probably naive at the time. Well, for me, I thought if I could ever make $40,000, I'd be rich.
You were not living in LA, bro. I'm sorry.
No, but I was living in Montana, and mom and dad had 2 full-time jobs. And they didn't make $40,000. $40,000 was extraordinarily rich where I grew up. And so I thought, if I could make $40,000, I worked 3 jobs in high school, paid for my college, and went to college. My first roommate in college had a new car. His parents bought him a car for graduating high school. He got a car to go to college. I got 3 more jobs. Well, I share this story because 40,000 was my number. I remember my first job out of grad school. I got a job and it was think $56,000 or $58,000 a year. And I was like, I've made it. Everything else was going to be gravy for me because I knew I could survive on less than that. I was like, this is gravy. Everything else is good. And I use that as a metaphor, right? Why can't you strive satisfied? Now, I've made hundreds of millions of dollars.
I knew it.
Some of you know I had my outcome with another company called Kajabi. We got valued at $2 billion. I made more money than I could ever even consider. But I don't feel like there was extraordinary difference in my life, psychologically or inside with my heart and what I desire of helping people and what I do. I still do the same things I did 20 years ago when I was barely earning anything. And I share that because I aligned with what I loved and I put myself into it. And I think when you can do that over and over and over and over again, great abundant things happen. But I've been, the reputation I have in the industry is pretty unanimous across anybody. You ask anyone, who's the happiest guy in the personal development industry? Who's the happiest guy in the creator industry? I was like, Brendon. And they've said that when I started, and they say that now. And that is one of my great achievements in life, is I taught myself to be happy. That's,
Love that.
yeah. Teach yourself to be happy, because why not strive happy? Why strive gritting and tearing your teeth out and not sleeping good at night? Why? Like, why not work equally as hard? I work very hard because I'm passionate about it.
That's what
but
I
I'm
meant.
having the time of my life, because it's all bonus time once you face death. It's all bonus time once you earn that certain money you were after. It's all bonus time once you found love. It's all bonus time once you found your passion. It's like, when you're living in bonus time, you probably appreciate it even more.
I love that. Right? Come on, guys. You know.
Thank you. Strive satisfied. Be happy and joyful and confident and fulfilled as you strive. And you'll notice, not only do you enjoy the journey more, but then you find that actually there's a lot of destination in the journey.
Yeah. It's funny. You don't know this, but 30 years ago when we first moved here, 35 years ago, the church that we were a part of, Kim and I, they had a newsletter. And they'd asked me to take over and help lead. And I wrote a news article. And it said, I opened up by saying, I'm going to make a confession that may disqualify me from leadership. And so I just need you to prepare you that you may never trust me or respect me again. And then the next line says, I'm happy. And I know that in Los Angeles, that's not acceptable. And I know that it eliminates the possibility that I can be a brooding artist. And I've tried to hide it for so long, but I'm actually happy. I love life. I wake up and I'm so grateful for this existence, and I go to bed reflecting on what I get to do and what I get to live. And there is almost like an unpopularity of happiness.
Yes.
It's like you're shallow if you're happy. You're not ambitious enough if you're happy. And I think when I was saying compulsive, I wasn't meaning an out of control ambition. I actually see you as passionately in love with life.
Thank you.
And with the things you love to do. And that is experienced by the rest of us as like some propeller that just shoots you forward in life. And oh, can we tell them earlier what we were
It's private.
private? So I'm listening to Brendon, and I'm like, not just listening to him talk, but just feeling everyone's love for Brendon. Right? He loves you. You love him. I felt like I was in the middle of a romantic movie. It was like, and it was like just absolutely beautiful. And so I texted my son, Aaron, I said, he's Woody from Toy Story. Everybody loves Woody, and he's the hero, you know. And so I went in the back. I said, Brendon, you're Woody. Like everybody loves you. You're like the hero. You're the character everybody wants to bring home. And then Brendon goes,
I was like, you're Buzz Lightyear. He's like strong, and he flies, and he goes into the universe.
Like, I was like, you're Buzz Lightyear. You're like,
Yeah. And
you're
I
the
really,
hero of the movie. You're like, you're in the ether.
and I
You're
started
like,
laughing because I heard Buzz's
you have
phrase,
superpowers.
eternity and beyond,
Yes.
except he can't fly. And so I thought, well, here we are recreating Toy Story. And but I think that one of the things that I find so compelling about you and your journey and your success is that we go to social media and everyone yelling at us about our success tells us we have to be miserable, tells us we have to suffer, tells us that we can't be happy, tells us that we're not enough, tells us that it's almost like if you don't have all these things pushing you that are so negative energies, anger, bitterness, proof of concept that I'm worthy of your value and respect. And they're just bad drivers. And it doesn't surprise me that your voice has become such a singular voice in the industry, because you're not just one decimal off, you're 180 degrees in the opposite direction. You're actually, I think, telling us that we can love life, love ourselves, and live a deeply meaningful life and have success in the process. Am I mishearing you?
That was the best summary. Thank you. That's beautiful. Thank you. I think what we see a lot on social media, and I will say appropriately in some ways, is this demand that you have to have all this discipline. And that discipline is the maker. And you should do it. If you don't want to do it anyway, you need the habit, you need the routine, you need the protocols. You have to be more self-disciplined to achieve the next level. And in many ways, for lots of people, that's totally true. So I don't discount the guys who are saying that. Because wherever you're being driven by, whether it's deficiency or it's fear or you don't want to lack something, or even if it's service, everything's fuel. Everything is fuel. But being from where I'm from, you also know that there's clean fuel. Some things burn clean, and some things pollute as it burns.
Yeah.
And some people, they're fueled, but what they've done is they've polluted their health. They've polluted their morality, or they've poisoned those around them. My work, High Performance Habits, was shocking to me. We did the world's largest study of high performers ever done worldwide, data from 190 countries. There's only 195. So we had an extraordinary data set. We had unbelievable interviews with some of the world's top performers. And what really and genuinely shocked me about that experience was to find that high performance, even in its definition, what it meant was these were people who achieved long-term success in measurable ways, so you could measure it, long-term external success. But the wildest thing happened. They also had higher well-being and more positive, fulfilling relationships. So they achieved extraordinary success without wrecking their health or their relationships. And I was like, I want to know that.
Yeah.
I want long-term success, but I don't want the compromise of having to wreck my health to get it or wreck the people around me to get it. And a big part of that is they're more cleanly fueled. They're being pulled. They're acts of service that is making them high performing. And I think it's so important because this toxic self-discipline is something that I think a lot of people don't realize they're spreading. They don't mean to. They're being honest. For them, self-discipline changed the game for them. And they needed some pretty bitter fuel to do it. That's just where they were consciously. That was just their exposure. That was the work that they had been able to do at that point in their life, spiritually, emotionally, psychologically. Later on in their lives, once they've gotten over that and they've succeeded and they look back, they always ultimately go, you know what? I didn't like the way I felt. I didn't enjoy that. I didn't have fun. I was too hard on myself. I could have been better. And I just think there's ways to view things that are positive for you. You have to find. I tell people it's not sexy. It's not clickbait stuff. I think that discipline is so much easier when you enjoy what you're doing. I think discipline is so much easier when you like yourself. I think discipline is so much easier when you want to help people. I think discipline is something that you can have. I'm a disciplined person. I can make myself do lots of things, but I don't feel like I'm, ripping at myself or hurting my relationships to do it. And I think that that's something that's really inspiring to people. They go, oh, I can strive in a different way. And I'll share a story that happened just a couple blocks from here. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I don't know LA at all. A place called Glendale. Is that near? I don't know. Maybe it's not a couple blocks. Where? A place called Glendale, California. Okay.
Yeah, it's close.
I'm being honest. See, I was honest. I was like, I don't know if that's a couple blocks because everything feels like it's 20 minutes here. So I don't know.
Yeah, it's not a
3
couple
blocks
blocks.
is 20 minutes. Okay, so let me go back to the story. It happened in Glendale, California, at the Alex Theater with a friend of ours. And this would not be something that is negative to say because this person shared it publicly. But a friend of ours, Ed Milet. And so the singular, most profound moment of learning I saw happen in this entire year. And I spend my every day in learning. Ed was on stage sharing about success and organizing yourself and getting the mindset for success. And Ed is an incredible teacher, an incredibly accomplished person, and a big giver, a huge heart, a brilliant man, worth hundreds of millions of dollars. He's telling his story of building his success in his business, and he's showing pictures on the big screen like this of his island, like he bought an island,
It's a little larger than your island.
He's what?
A little larger than our island.
Yeah. I mean, it's his story is
it's beautiful.
Really, it's an incredibly inspiring story, and he's a great leader, and he's a powerful guy, and he's up on stage, and he's just jacked. If you know Ed, he's just jacked. He calls me from the gym, just jacked. I mean, the guy's jacked. And he's on stage, and he's showing all these pictures of success, telling his whole story. And he's walking across stage. I remember exactly where he was. I'm watching from backstage. I remember where he was standing when he stopped. Because if you know speakers, great speakers can tell when we're in extemporaneous speaking versus when we're in a story we know or in a framework we know. We can see what's happening for each other on stage. I can feel Erwin on stage. He can feel me on stage because we've run the reps up here. And I see him kind of stop in the middle of the stage. And he kind of wanders over to the front. And he looks at the audience out of nowhere. And he goes, but guys, if I'm being honest with you, I have to tell you something. If you've been hearing I have heart problems, he told the audience. And I have to tell you, if something happened, if I did die, I have a lot of regret. And the audience is like, you have a lot of regret? I mean, this amazing life you just showed us and told us. Mm-hmm. You're successful. You reach millions of people. You have unlimited money. Like, what are you talking about? You have a family. You have, a good life. He says, I have a lot of regret. Because, with my buddy Brendon and what I see here, I have a lot of regret because, you know what? I didn't have much fun. I did all those things, but I didn't really enjoy it. And I see the joy and positivity other people can have along the way, and I didn't do that. And this next stage of my life, I'm going to teach myself to have fun. I'm going to have more fun. I'm going to schedule more fun. And it was a really profound moment to see somebody that achieve, that accomplish, I should say, achieve that breakthrough literally in real time on stage. I was crying backstage. It was unbelievable to watch because, see, you could do it all, but your regret will be you didn't enjoy it. Mm-hmm. This is the most profound thing you can learn from studying people at the end. I had the blessing of working in hospices because I wondered when I had my car accident, is that what other people experience at the end of their life? So I worked in hospices for many years, and what happens, and the profound truth about it is people wonder that. You don't have to be with many people who wonder at the end of their life if they enjoyed it to realize, I want to enjoy mine. I don't want to get there and wonder if I enjoy it. I want to know it. I want to enjoy the day. I want to feel the day. I want to experience the day, as you teach so well. You know, you teach so much of your work that I resonate with is being present and being in the moment to allow that creativity and that magic and that inner nature. So I actually would love to ask you that question of how do you get there? Because for a lot of people, that joy and that glee, and I would say for you, in terms of how I've learned about your spirituality, but also your intellect, you experience ecstasy, not with the drug. Like
no,
you
without
do.
it, that's a crazy thing.
When he talks about epiphanies with us, you can tell he goes there. Like he accesses something because he can get present, and very few people understand elation on the journey, not just elation after the goalpost. So how do you, because I know you experience that quite a bit, that you probably lay in bed and you have moments of elation or ecstatic thinking. Emerson had that. William James had that. Some of the great writers and psychologists of history, they had that ability to allow that. How do you do that? How do you find that presence or that allowance, or I would actually be interested in what you term it, that allows you to have ecstasy or elation?
No one in my life has ever asked me that question. And so I don't have a preset answer, but I immediately had a thought. When I was around 24, 25 years old, I told myself I wanted to not be a material being having a spiritual experience, but to be a spiritual being having a material experience. And in my own like conversations with God, I said, I want to know what it's like to live a transcendent life moment by moment. And so there's a sense that a part of me feels like I live in a different dimension or reality, and then I visit here, as opposed to I live here and then I visit there. And it is like a structural internal world difference. Like when I'm in my imaginary world, I'm in my real world. And this is a lesser world than the world that I'm a citizen of. And so I feel like when I visit here, it's almost like I feel like I'm translated back here to bring what I learned there. And I know that doesn't make complete sense, but you know, it's like when you go on, you ever go on vacation or travel to another country, and it just, you come back seeing the world differently. You know, every time I visit a different country or a different culture, I see things I've never seen before, and I feel I come back differently. But it's the same kind, even more so on a transcendently spiritual level, where I do believe that we're created to connect deeply, intimately, and normally with God. Like that is supposed to be our normal space, is in this eternal transcendent space. Anything less is actually abnormal for us. I think we think of ourselves almost like we're like groupers swimming in the ocean, but we're actually porpoises. We're not supposed to live in that. We actually breathe a different oxygen. And you know, when the dolphin comes up or the porpoise comes up, that's when they're actually catching oxygen and they go back into the world. I think most of us get confused and we think this is our reality, rather than, oh no, we're something transcendent and we're supposed to bring that here and affect this material world. You said you love the word matter when you saw This Matters. In the first book I ever wrote, I have a little section called Spirit Matters. And it was a play on words for me, in that everything that's truly spirit materializes, and that everything that's material began as spiritual. And it sounded insane until, you know, Einstein and others began realizing that everything that looks like mass is actually energy. You know, if I'd said everything is energy 100 years ago, people would have thought I was insane or on drugs or something. Now you just know science. But if I say everything is spiritual, that it only looks material, it only looks temporal, it only feels as if it's dust, but it's actually spiritual, and that's what we're supposed to bring to it. It may sound insane, but it's actually reality. And so I think I actually think I do have a lot of epiphanies, and I have more than I ever would tell people, because I thought people would think I'm insane, if I actually told them what I experience and the universe I live in. And I actually think I do all my learning there. And I'm a different person there. I don't have the same limitations as I have here. Here I'm just very average and mildly intelligent and, barely capable, a lot of
Handsome,
things.
strong.
There you go.
Capable.
But in that universe, I have limitless capacity. And it's funny, Kim, my wife, who's really quite amazing. You ever get a compliment that's sort of like a compliment? I remember, do you remember, honey, a few years ago, you said to me, "What happened to you?" And she looked at me, she goes, "What happened to you?" And she went on to describe, like, you used to not be, I think you were saying, like, super smart. You used to be very untalented. You used to, like, you didn't have, what she was saying is, I married you and it was like a gift to you. You were so average and bland and ordinary. And she said, somewhere in your life, and it's a weird thing to say, but she's like, somewhere in your life you became a genius. And I actually, in a strange way, Brendon, feel as if she's exactly right. You would have never guessed that I would have anything unique or special or extraordinary. I actually think I'm what an average, ordinary human being looks like when they step into a transcendent life. And that they're so much more accessible to us than we ever imagine, And I love, like, humanity. Like, I think all my epiphanies are because I want to help humanity. Like, I don't think my epiphanies, I love God, but my epiphanies don't come from loving God. That's where my relationship comes from. My epiphanies actually come because God has taught me to love people. And when you love people, you want to solve all the human problems. And so that's the best answer I have, because it's not a question I'm comfortable with. But if people see anything like unique or extraordinary in me, I want you to know it was unexpected. I'm your story. The kid that felt like he was nothing, who was insignificant, who didn't have a reason to live, who no one saw any talent in, who was told all his life he would never accomplish anything. The way you felt is the way I felt. And the way you're shocked about your life, believe me, I've been shocked.
Shocked.
About my life. Like,
You're just shocked? I hope everyone is. I was shocked by my life. I think that's.
Yeah.
I want to come back to this because I think that language he just used shows awe and reverence for your blessings. And everybody I've ever met who attained a real level of success and happiness, there was an awe. And I wanted you to hear this. There wasn't an awe at the destination. They were kind of in awe and reverence for the blessings as it was unfolding. They're kind of like, wow, that just happened. You're just like, woof, I can't believe it. They were like, actually took joy in calling you. You wouldn't believe what happened to me today. And a lot of people, good things happen. They never call anybody. They never tell anybody because they just expected they want 10 more of them. And other people are like, I can't believe this. And I think the universe or God or whatever you want to call it, I think it recognizes when something good happens for you and you're shocked by it. You have awe or reverence for it. I think the universe goes, Mikey likes it. Give him some more of this good stuff.
Yeah.
She likes it. She appreciates it. She sees it. She honors it. She feels it. She amplifies it. Give her more, babe. I think the universe is like that. I really do. I think that consciousness or energy or quantum field or God or spirituality, I think it truly is at its nature expansive, as you were talking about today.
Yeah.
If it wasn't expanding, it'd collapse on itself, is what you taught us today.
Yeah.
And I think that expansiveness then appreciates expansiveness.
Yeah.
And when you appreciate the blessings you have, it goes, let's go right on ahead and expand those blessings for her. She saw it. Yeah. She felt it. She recognized the blessings. Let's go ahead and open up another gate for her. Yeah. And I think that's a real thing.
Yeah. If you think about it, I mean, the universe is ever expanding, and we are a part of the universe. So if our inner universe is not expanding, we're working against the universe rather than for it or with it. And actually, God has designed us to be ever expansive. But the problem is the universe doesn't have a personality. The universe doesn't get paralyzed by fear or insignificance or doubt or failure, but we do. Mm-hmm. And so the universe inside of us can be paralyzed by our own self-doubt, our own fear, our own lack of value, lack of self. And you know, I think a part of what you're doing, which I think is so beautiful, is you're helping people allow the universes to expand once again. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think there's something really wonderful in doing that, in like helping people become the best, most beautiful version of themselves. The only way humanity will change is if we change, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that's a part of, I think we're doing something that will shape the course of human history in the most beautiful way possible. Mm-hmm. You know, we're past our time, and we wanted to open up for a few questions. And I think we have a couple of microphones. Erwin McManus and Carlos Pimentel are going to guide the conversation. Hey, can we just thank Brendon so much for what he's poured into us?
Thank you.
Chip.
Thank you. Thank you, Erwin. That was awesome.
You got a hand right there,
Okay.
Carlos, behind you. Stand up, tell us your name, and then ask your question.
Hi, I'm Ginger. Brendon, while you were working with the hospice patients, what was the common thing that you saw that they said made them happiest in life?
So good. That's an easy one.
Repeat the questions. That way we can have it recorded.
She asked me when I was doing hospice work, what was a common thing that I saw and heard people share that made them happy in life, especially at that stage of their life. And it's uniform. It's universal, I should say. And a lot of other people have written about this. They have people there. They have people there. When you're at the end of your life, if you have people there, it's a completely different experience than if you're alone. And you and I were talking this backstage. Erwin shared how a lot of people he coaches, I don't want to fill your words, you want to describe how you shared it with me, that you have to teach them how to, they're already successful, so he says, I'm not going to teach them how to succeed. I'm going to help.
I'm going to teach you how not to die alone.
He's going to teach successful people how not to die alone. And that's the thing in hospice, when there's others around them. And I would also say being a third party in those situations. I was in hospice with my father, but I was also in hospice with other people. And it is very obvious when they did not gather loving, kind, caring, positive people in their lives. And the ones they end up with at the end do them a disservice in life. They don't know how to honor them. They don't take care of them appropriately. They don't make sure they get their water or their medicines. And so it's very important that you gather good people in life, from your family to your spouse to your kids to your partners, because someone's going to be there at the end or no one's going to be there at the end. And either one, if it's going to be someone, you want someone who you've developed great relationships with. And I think that's the untold thing, especially in my industry. We just don't talk about sociology enough. We don't talk about relationships enough. They do it for, something as a YouTube thumbnail about, how to create a good relationship, but it's not, it's almost like solving. In those moments or on those videos, you hear people talk about how to solve relationship. But the most important thing is, as a life mission and purpose, as a centrality to us. Like if job one is learning to summon the best of who we are, to tap into that and to summon that, I would say job two is learn to find greatness in other people and find great friends, great relationships, great lovers, if that's your relationship, your spouse, your partner. It's one of the most important things you can ever build or collect in your life is great humans, because you'll find so much satisfaction and fulfillment, but also support in that.
That's beautiful.
Great question.
The only thing I'm going to ask is if we could be more succinct so we get more questions in.
Great, let's do that.
Yeah, okay, says the Lord of the Rings. Are you freaking kidding me? Don't shame him for his long answer.
Oh no, that's fine. I do that all the time. Oh, I'm used to that. Yes, I'll be quiet. I'll be faster.
Yeah, okay. You've never answered anything fast. You have a question, yes?
I'll stay till midnight. I know I'm the worst. I'm sorry. That's a good point.
It was an excellent answer. It was the perfect length.
We have
I
a
was
question
saying for
right here.
future possibilities.
Oh, we're right in the middle. We're right in the middle.
I'm going to sit down again.
Well, I don't really know. Like, hey, Mom.
Stand up and move to the... Okay.
So, you were talking about striving.
Tell us your name.
My name is Mehul. Nice to meet you guys.
Hello.
Or nice to meet you. All right. What's up? The pressure of trying to get this question out. All right. You were talking about striving satisfied, and when we're talking about when you had this with like before you became who you became, when you took that home to your family, to your wife, and would you say striving satisfied is what was like the determination between how did you go home and say something like, it doesn't matter who I am, what matters is who I'm becoming? And like my wife would be like, okay, then become a trash man, go take out the trash. Mm-hmm. So how would you balance that in that time of becoming? That's what I'm trying to ask.
That's so good. I don't think you ever have to argue. I don't think you have to explain. I don't think you have to justify. I think you have to demonstrate. I don't have to tell everyone my philosophy. I have to demonstrate it. If she wants me to take out the garbage, and in my mind I said, I'm going to be an extraordinary husband, I'm going to show her an extraordinary husband. I'm going to do it. And so I think it's live it, demonstrate it. That's the thing. I've never tried to explain to my family, to my friends, here's all my life philosophy. There's videos you can watch on the internet. I'm on YouTube. I'm on podcasts. I'm on social media. My family can watch it if they want, but I don't try to explain it to them. My inner circle, they just see me demonstrate and live, and they're like, that kid's living his best life. And if they're inspired by that and they want to try, awesome. If not, no problem. Do you try to explain it?
No, I was just thinking the same thing, that especially if you're trying to say something that you've said before that you didn't do, it doesn't really resonate. Mm-hmm. And because the people closest to you know when you're not telling the truth. Mm-hmm. To me, the only language people really understand is action. And the only language your brain really understands is action. And so if you tell your brain, I'm gonna be disciplined, your brain goes, liar. But if you start doing disciplined things, your brain's going, oh wow, he's deciding to become someone different. Mm-hmm. And so I don't think I've ever sat down with my family and go, this is my philosophy or something like that. And,
oh yeah,
but I will say, like,
I've begged you to tell us your philosophy.
What's that?
I've begged you to tell us your philosophy. I have begged you to tell us your philosophy.
Oh, you begged me to tell us. That's probably true. And I don't think I've ever actually had a vision of success. Like, oh, this is what success is for me. Mm-hmm. I think I've had two clear ambitions. One, to become a certain kind of human being and to serve people. And my measure of my life progress is if I've become more and more the human being I long to be. Mm-hmm. And then if that has actually resulted in helping more and more people. And so when people they talk about success, I'm a little blurry because I go, I never thought about that. That just became the after effect of becoming the person that I believe God created in me and then serving people with that.
I Love that.
Yeah, and so you're talking about your wife. Wives are the last person to ever believe you. You know, they are. Because they know you, and they know even that you might be well-intended, but you're not. Remember, most of the time when you're ready to make a change, you do not yet have the tools to make them. You're really taking the first step and taking the second step, and like under promise, over deliver. I would say, especially in your relationships.
I just love it. Add a quick one. I promise to be quick. This will help everybody in the room so much, though, because I've helped so many people in their personal development journey, as you have in their faith journey, and I can just share this. Please don't ever believe you need to have anyone's permission or enthusiasm or understanding to do your thing.
Yep.
You do not need their permission, their enthusiasm, or their understanding to live your better life. You don't just, if you can just let go of that, do your thing that is calling you to become more and be better. If you want to get healthy and everyone in your family eats like crap, you do not have to convert them. Just demonstrate. If they come along for the ride, that was their path. If that's not their path, God's got a different plan. Let life be their educator. Let them follow their own timeline. Don't be self-righteous about it. Don't wait for their permission, their enthusiasm, their support. Summon the best of who you are. Live your day as best as you can. If they get it, great. If they judge it, likely. Either way, be your best.
In fact, it's odd because a lot of times
I got another one.
they war against you.
Yeah.
A lot of times when you try to elevate who you are, the people in your life are not cheering you on. They're actually trying to hold you back.
Yep. And they get bitter.
Yeah.
They get judgmental. They get bitter. And many of them get very scared because they know you like this and you like this love them. But will you like this still love them? So their unconscious change, their unconscious fear is you change, and that might change your level of acceptance or being or approval of them. And so they try to smear it out, make fun of you, tease you, be bitter. And it's unconscious. They just don't understand that that's what they're doing. And so when that happens, you don't let it knock you off your stride. Even though it's hurtful, you take the next step.
That is life changing if someone can absorb that and apply it.
Feel that.
Yep. Back over here.
Hi, I'm Julie. Thanks so much for being here. I'm a coach. How do I be a better coach to really high performers who almost don't agree with their results? They have such low self-confidence, and it just hurts so much that there's so much more impact possible, and they want that. But their own identity of low self-confidence holds them back. How can I be a better coach for folks like that?
I think the most important thing is you ask them if that's true. So when you're a great coach, we often as coaches have an opinion, and we've been trained in so many things that maybe our clients haven't. And so we want to say these things to them, or we think these things. And I tell coaches, your most important function is to reflect back to the person many of your own thoughts to ask if they're true. And a lot of coaches, it's like a funny world because that doesn't happen in therapy as much as it happens in what we do with high performers. And so what we have to kind of say is, I have something I'd like to share with you. I don't know if it's true, so you might have to forgive me. Can I just ask you a question? To which everyone says, yes. Say, it seems to me that as you describe yourself, you're always kind of diminishing yourself. And you're not really aware that there's maybe a lack of confidence there, or a lack of accepting the reality of the results you've already gotten. You're not giving yourself credit. I wonder if that's true. Do you ever feel like you're less than what you're actually capable of? And let them answer. And then they might be like, I don't know what you're talking about. I feel great. And you're like, dang. Or they may be like, well, yeah, kind of. And your whole job as a coach, ultimately the job of a coach is two sides of a coin. One is discovery. Discovery. Ask questions, gain self-awareness, be Socratic so they can self-discover. The other side is decision-making, helping them move to decision-making. In between those two things, they'll find their discipline. And I think it's really important to realize we're trying to generate options with them in that decision-making part. So we might ask an exploratory question, that's the discovery, but then we got to flip it to decision-making. If they say, yeah, I'm really struggling with my self-esteem, or I really do feel lowly, then we say, instead of why does that happen, when does that happen, which would be more therapeutic, a coach would say, okay, next time that happens, what could you say to yourself or summon in yourself that would feel true, that would help you access something that is stronger? So we live in the next time that happens world. Not why did that happen? Not why do you feel that way, but rather what do you want to feel next time and how could you access that? So if they do say, yeah, I'm struggling with my confidence, your job is to help them now generate options for how they'll generate that confidence next time. Generating options, so generating that conversation. It's one reason I'm such a fan of him, because he's such a generative person. You can see him generating ideas and generating the future, and I think we're both that way. And so help that client generate more options for what to do next time, to feel the win, to feel the success, to integrate it. You know, it's sometimes I ask high performance somebody, what could you do to actually feel the level of success you have in your life? How would you feel it? Doesn't sound like you do. Is that true? And then we'll move from there.
That is so good. A lot of hands, little time.
Hey, so my name's Tanner. Thankful to be in the room with all of you guys, and especially you guys. Brendon, my question's for you. I'm taking myself back to when you were at the arena talking about your car accident, and I think that was probably the moment you decided that you needed to be more optimistic, bring more liveliness, happiness into your life. Practically, the next couple years, however long it may be, what was like your, did you implement gratitude in your life? I noticed you said that you were doing some qigong in the bathroom, so you obviously are introduced to breath work. Like, what were the things practically that you started doing to then make the happiness come automatic, rather than like having to, remind yourself to like, oh yeah, I need to do this to be optimistic today or to be happy today?
Oh, so good. Great question. Great question. Briefly, the number one thing was learning to orientate my attention and my day to what I believed I faced at the end. So really briefly, if you haven't heard my story of my car accident before, the car accident was like this epic slow motion experience that I had. And I was sort of greeted with what I call life's last questions, which I didn't know cognitively at the time was happening. But essentially, when you're facing the very end of your life, you wonder, did I live? And if you have scenes of your family, your friends, it makes you wonder who you're going to miss and who might miss you, and it makes you ask, did I love? And you're going to wonder about your impact in the world, which is, did I matter? And I faced these throughout this car accident where we spun and flipped several times off the road, and I pulled myself through the windshield of the car, and I stood on top of the car bleeding out. And when I was looking down at my blood, I remember asking that last question, did I even matter? And I did not like any of the answers. I hadn't lived. I'd been thinking about taking my life. I hadn't loved because a woman broke my heart, which is how I became suicidal, so I'd shut off my heart. I hadn't mattered because I was a lost young man who never heard of purpose and service and leadership, really, outside of my dad's experience, but no one else in the culture around me. And later on, reflecting and journaling about the car accident, I learned those questions. Did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? And the epiphany that came to me was like, oh my God, at the end of our lives, we're actually going to ask questions to determine whether or not we were happy with our life. My questions happen to be, did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? And that epiphany gave me this simple idea. Every night that I go to bed, I mean, literally, every night that I go to bed, I ask, did I live today? Did I love today? Did I matter today? And it's not like every day's yes, 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 like Happy Dog, Woody style, but it's like, but the nights that I can say yes to some of those questions, I sleep the best. And so the biggest thing that I did, more than anything else, it wasn't cold baths and cold plunges. It wasn't, supplementation. It was literally at the end of the day reflecting, did I live? Did I love? Did I matter? Meaning now I had an evaluative framework for life that became intentional. Oh, I'm going to live today because I'm going to ask that question tonight. I'm going to love today. I'm going to remember to be kind to her and love because I'm going to ask that question tonight. I'm going to do something with myself today because I'm going to ask that question tonight. And it just happened to be that really 5-10 years of that, all of a sudden I was a pretty alive guy, lots of loving relationships and making a huge impact because I had an evaluative framework. That was my intention for the day. Live, love, matter. Some of you saw our Facebook page, Brendon Burchard, Live, Love, Matter. It's got 5 million fans. I was like in the first 100 people on earth to hit 3 million fans on Facebook. And literally it was my name and then Live, Love, Matter. And everyone would ask, what's that mean? And I was like, and I'd tell the story and it became a thing. But I share that specifically because the number one thing is I had an intention for how I want to live my life. And so if I could give anyone here a second chance like I got, your second chance is learning to contemplate what are the questions you're going to ask at the end of your life to see if you're happy with it. Because your questions might be different. Your questions at the end might be, was I a good dad? Your question might be, was I a good mom? Your question might be, did I honor this artistic gift I gave? Your question might be, did I do this potential I felt from divine? Your questions are different. I just don't believe you can live a conscious life until you consider the questions you're going to ask at the end. Because how could you possibly live so you'd be happy with the answers? And that was the biggest shift for me. Knowing that intention and trying to, at first it was just evaluating myself and it was a little self-critical. But I'm glad I had that period. Until then I could be, instead of self-critical, learning to switch self-criticism into intention. Now I was no longer self-critical, I was just more intentional. And as I became more intentional, then life just got better and better. Is that helpful? Great question. Round of applause. Thank you. That was a great question. Give a round of applause. Great question.
By the way, Sean, my name is Sean. Thank you so much. You both are incredible teachers, and I just am so blessed. Another great teacher in life are our mistakes. We forget a lot of things, but we don't usually forget our mistakes. And I'm just wondering if there's been a mistake or a negative outcome or something that has become a great teacher for either of you in your journey into becoming the great teachers who you are today.
Oh, you've been answering all the questions. You answer the one about mistakes.
That's a hard one. You take it. Yeah, you go ahead.
It's not hard to think of a mistake. Oh. It's they're just everywhere. But yeah, it's funny because I don't really reflect on mistakes too much. I learn from them and then I move on, and I don't even put them in that category. Really, I don't think I put things in mistake like failure or success categories. And I think that every day there are things that can go wrong and things that can go right, and you have to kind of decide how you negotiate that. But I mean, was it a mistake when I moved to LA with our foster daughter Patty? Aaron was 3, Mariah was 30 days old. I didn't have a job. I had no income. We rented a house that we could not afford, and Kim said we can't afford it, and I said we can't afford anything, so let's go ahead and default on this one. And I mean, was it a mistake that I moved us here that early? I can look back and go, oh, I could see how objectively that, not just one mistake, a whole series of mistakes in that season of my life. But then again, they created such a texture of experience, and I learned so much. Like my first book, An Unstoppable Force, is completely everything I learned from all the mistakes I made during that season in my life. And if I had not made those mistakes, I wouldn't have had the challenges that gave me greater insights that allowed me to teach at a higher level. So I'm not trying to avoid mistakes. I just think that I don't really think of them. I think mistakes are life. Mistakes are things you do. Mistakes are just life. We're imperfect. We don't have comprehensive knowledge. We don't know everything that's going to happen. And, is it a mistake when you turn the wrong way when you're trying to get somewhere and now you're lost? And in those moments, I literally say to myself, I would have never seen this road. And so I think I have a bizarre perspective, even in mistakes. I mean, I totally separated my elbow. It was going in two directions 6 weeks ago. And going after that ball was clearly a mistake. Like, I know it. I've gone in my brain, how do I stop myself from doing that? And then I go, okay, it was a mistake. But I kind of like the part of my brain that doesn't know how to hold back. And I met so many interesting doctors and surgeons and physical therapists that I've got to talk to about life and God. And so I just see all the good that's come out of that too. So I think mistakes in the end become the sum total of your own response to them.
That's good. I think that's a good word to be precise on, and then I'll tell you my mistakes. So you have trial and error in life. That's expected. Try, win, fail, learn, try, win, fail, learn, advance, try, learn, fail, win. That's trial and error. That's expected. Accidents, like your arm was not a mistake, that was an accident.
Going for that ball was definitely
Unless, that's right.
Yeah.
Unless, so accidents are unexpected.
Yeah.
A mistake is you knew better. And you shouldn't have. So I'll share mine because they're easy to categorize. Mm-hmm. My mistakes, I can see them super clear and I can tell you a million stories because I've got a lot of them. One, I lied. You almost always know when you're lying. And lying is usually a mistake, right? It's a mistake. You had the take, LA people, take. You knew what you were supposed to do during the take, but you lied. You weren't authentic in your acting. Mistake. Mistake. You knew, so it's a mistake. You knew better. I knew better to lie about something I'd made a mistake on. I knew better to lie about what I felt. I knew, you know better. Mm-hmm. But the other one for me is like, what major mistakes? I'd say I was mean. There was two people I was mean to in my life, and it was a mistake. And even when I was saying something really, like an argument to this person, I remember there was a girl I loved in high school, and we got in an argument, and I said mean, terrible things to her, like a high school boy would, just like mean stuff. And I knew walking away, I should have said those things. I was like, that was mean. And I think we know that. I remember one time, one of the great moments of the pandemic for me, Denise and I were locked down and we were living somewhere else, and we were, arguing about something. I don't even know what we were arguing about. And she's had this best line for me ever. She goes, what is it about me that makes you think you can talk to me like that? And I was like, oh, and of course I'm a guy, but I'm a guy. I'm like, how am I talking to you? Because I didn't even know, I did not hear that whatever I had said to her, there must have been meanness into it. I didn't hear it. Later on, she told me it sounded like condescension, which is important to know. And I was like, oh, that's a mistake. I didn't mean to talk to you that way. Mm-hmm. I know better to do that. I wasn't catching that I was doing that. Like when you're unintentionally mean is a mistake. You know not to be mean, but you're not catching it, the wrong take. And so for me, that's like lies and being mean fit in the mistake category. I also think that those are the types of mistakes that end up bouncing into the regret category later. So I'm very attentive to truth, and I'm very attentive to kindness. And the more I can be attentive to those two things, I just minimize the damage along the way.
Yeah, I could not agree more. Those are two really great frameworks, truth and kindness. And I have a memory issue. Like I have great long-term memory, but I have a defective short-term memory. So I can forget things completely, 100%. And one of the things it forced me to do is to not lie. Because to be a good liar, you have to have a really good memory. And I would feel anxious and I realized, oh, okay, I don't have to remember what I said. I just need to remember what I would say because it'll be consistent to what I did say.
Nice.
If that makes sense.
It does. That's beautiful.
So I came at truth at a very peculiar direction. And, but I do think if you tell the truth, you remove most of the mistakes in your life. And if you learn how to be kind, you remove the half of those mistakes.
Yes.
I completely 100% concur. That is so beautiful that we should put it on the screen or something. All right,
Truth and kindness.
It sounds like the Bible. It says that we should actually speak the truth in love. And you're dealing with truth and kindness, which is kind of beautiful. Yeah. Here we say that truth should never travel faster than love.
Nice. I like that.
Yeah. And because, sometimes people who are have very strong convictions, they feel like their job is to tell you the truth, but their truth always travels faster than their love.
So it cuts.
Yeah. And so I go, no, truth should always travel behind love. Love should always travel faster than the truth.
So good. Yeah. Wow.
Hi, I'm not holding the mic. My name is Maricela.
You tried.
I tried. It's just an LA thing. Erwin, earlier you said that if you want to play with God, exercise your imagination. And this question is for the both of you. Could you share your practice for exercising in your imagination?
First of all, I think your imagination is like this this space that doesn't have inherent material of its own. Like your imagination is informed and fueled by the health of your soul. So if your soul is filled with bitterness, anger, jealousy, fear, doubt, you end up with a dark imagination. And so your imagination is fueled. It's like your imagination is the canvas and your soul is the paint. But when your soul is filled with things like hope and love and joy and peace and kindness and compassion, now your imagination is fueled by different elements, different ingredients. And by the way, have you ever tried to get rid of a negative emotion and found it's really difficult to get rid of it? Or like a bitterness connected to something in your past? The reason is that no human emotion can exist in us without a story. And every negative emotion in our subconscious, in a sense, becomes the nightmare. And every positive emotion in our subconscious becomes a dream. But we're also the same way when we're awake. But a nightmare when you're awake is called bitterness. And like a dream when you're awake is called forgiveness. It's called hope. It's called love. And so the way I play with God in my imagination is I let my imagination run wild, informed by the best version of being human. And it just becomes a really wonderful, beautiful space to live in. And but it's also like the space where I can see who I've accepted myself to be when it's smaller than who I should be. And it's almost like I can go in as an 8-year-old child and walk out as a man, because I've allowed myself to embrace the things that are true, that are spoken into me. But I also think your imagination is supposed to be like a creative engine. I mean, Da Vinci imagined a submarine and a helicopter generations before we had the technology to create them. I just wish I could have a conversation with him. He's so imaginative. And that was a completely unproductive imagination in terms of for his generation. But 1,000 years later, our entire lives are reshaped by what he imagined. And so I think our imagination has expansive capacity. And, someone, I think a few weeks ago I said that everything that exists once existed in non-existence. Like everything that's material once existed in the non-material. The future is not created outside of us, it's created within us. The entire future of humanity exists in someone's imagination. And so when I think about that, I think, what do I need to imagine that I need to create? So it's not about daydreaming, it's almost about creating the architectural design for the future. And I actually think God gave us that. I remember I was at Columbia University years ago. I didn't know I was doing a debate with a scientist, a philosopher, and me. And the thing was, what can you know? What can be known? And the scientist said, what can be known as empirical knowledge. And I thought, that's good, And then the head of the philosophy department at Columbia was a Kantian philosopher. And she said, what can be known as human action? I thought, that's true too, And they read their introductions, and it was my turn to realize, oh my goodness, I'm in a debate. And I said, I'm not an expert on what can be known, because my entire life is spent on what is unknown. But science only grows through what's unknown. And human ethics, it may know what people do, but really the fascinating part of humanity is why we do what we do, which is in that unknown universe. And in the middle of it, we did a Q&A, like 500 3x5 cards, and all of them were for me. And I had this question. When you were a child, you had imaginary friends, Santa Claus, the Easter Bunny, and God. Why did you get rid of your other imaginary friends and keep God? It's like such a great question in front of 500 people at an Ivy League school. And I remember I said, first of all, you don't know me if you think I've given up my imaginary friends. And they're the only people who understand me. They've been with me all my life, and I'm keeping them. But you're right, I did have some imaginary friends, like Santa Claus and the Easter Bunny and the giant rabbit hidden in my closet at night. And God was an occasional visitor to my imagination, but not a regular, understood, identified visitor. I said, but just because you have imaginary friends doesn't mean you don't have a friend who created your imagination. Because without the human imagination, not only could we not imagine God, we couldn't imagine the future. We couldn't imagine a better us. We couldn't imagine a better life. We couldn't imagine a better world. We couldn't imagine anything that is actually tangibly the good that human beings have done. We imagine capturing fire. We imagine creating spheres. We imagine creating swords. We imagine creating telephones and televisions. Everything human beings have done has come out of the human imagination. So it seems to me the imagination is the proof of God. And so it was really interesting being in that space saying, I just think that just because we had imaginary friends, it doesn't invalidate that there is a God who created our imagination. I think actually it's the proof of God, the proof of the divine in us, that we can imagine what we cannot create, and then that we can create what we imagine. Yeah.
Whew. That was good, but shorter.
Oh, I should be shorter. Shorter. More succinct.
That was so good.
My son will love you for that.
No, I love it. I love it.
I love you so much. I love you. That was a 9-minute response, just so you're not. Do we have one more question left, and then we wrap it?
We have only time for one more question?
Yeah, but it for sure can't be you that answers it. It has to be Brendon.
But we'll let Brendon answer this one since he's our guest today.
Hi, my name's Robbie.
I saw you trying to grab that, Robbie.
I don't.
He's an artist. He's a musician. He's on stage.
You're so much bigger than me. If you want it, you can have it.
Hi. So that line, "strive, satisfied," it's something I love about Mosaic. It's lines that I hear like that I'm like, I don't know if I agree or understand, and then later on, I'm just like, I'm catching up to that reality. When even hearing it, it's just like, you can be happy, and I don't know. To me, it feels like easier said than done. And I'm trying to think. When I heard the way he explained it, he said, you just do the things you're passionate about, and that creates happiness in your life. But what about all the things you have to do that need to get done that you're not passionate about, and a lack of passion because passions change? Or how do you strive satisfied to help explain it to my wife later when we have this talk.
Yeah.
Don't explain it to anybody outside this room.
I hear a lot of questions in that. Did you hear?
Well, listen. Do you agree with striving? Do you agree with striving, trying, working, pushing, challenging yourself, aiming for something high? Okay. So we agree striving is okay. So now satisfied is the problem we have. So we're gonna ask. So striving is fine. So what qualifier do we want to put on it afterwards? Strive satisfied? Strive oblivious? Strive ungrateful? Strive emotionless? Strive lonely? I'm actually agnostic about whether it's the word satisfied, but I think each person has to choose what's that word going to be. You're going to work hard for success. How do you want it to feel? See, I want to feel satisfied, joyous, engaged, fulfilled as I'm doing it. I don't want one day I get to be happy, Brendon. I don't want to make myself suffer and grind and feel no life for 3 years so I can have a $150,000 paycheck. So for me, it's always been, I want to feel life as I'm doing it. I also have a spiritual component. I want to feel grateful for life as I'm doing it. I think if we get up to the pearly gates, if you believe there's any gates up there, or if you believe in a God or an afterlife or a heaven, or even a moment of cognition at the end of our biological function, I think we or God would really have an issue to say, you are granted this life, and you chose not to be satisfied with it, ever. You had all these things. Couldn't you be happy with any of it? I gave you this apparatus of emotion. I gave you this apparatus of cognition. I gave you 5 full senses. You never decided to align those to feel good. I gave you those things so that you could feel good. I gave you control over those things so you could feel good when you would like to. Now, I'm not hedonistic, so I'm not Mr. Everything has to be pleasureful. Like I said earlier, remember, on that spectrum, suffering the whole way. There's challenges, there's defeat, there's frustration, there's anger. For me, impatience was a big thing to get over. I really had to work on impatience a lot, because that's why I wasn't satisfied. I was impatient for more. I was just impatient, so I couldn't feel satisfied. And honestly, it sucked. And it's what Ed Milet ended up talking about. He built it, but he didn't enjoy it. And if you spend your life building something and you don't enjoy it along the way, it feels terrible, right? It doesn't matter how beautiful it is. If every brick you fashion out of clay, you hate. I hate this process. I show up. I hate this job. I hate this job. And this is terrible. And this is awful. Or I'm making myself do it today. I want to do 50 other things. I'm only going to do this thing. I'm going to force myself to do this thing. And I fashion all these beautiful bricks, and I fashion them into the cathedral. The challenge is, at the end, you won't be able to see the beauty of the cathedral. You only remember those forced bricks, and you won't be able to see it. You just go, every one of those, I hated doing that, even though you built a cathedral. So you better learn to make a few of those bricks and feel good about them if you want to feel good about the cathedral at the end. You got it?
I want to take a word that you used today and a word that you used when you spoke at the arena. I think it's strive and alive. Because when you spoke before, you talked about how we're all searching for aliveness. See, I listen. And today you're telling us about it's strive and satisfied. And maybe the word satisfied doesn't have the fullness of what you talk about when you talk about aliveness. And so I think it's strive and alive. If you strive and you exist, then you've missed it completely.
I can be satisfied
Yeah.
and still want more.
Yeah.
That's what blows people's mind. They're like, well, if I'm satisfied, I want more. I'm like, what? Have you ever had enough ice cream and you were actually satisfied, but you still got more? So don't tell me you can not be satisfied and still want more. I'm satisfied, but I still want more. I'm satisfied in the difference I've made. I'd still like to make more difference. And I also suggest, on top of this, what you're sharing about aliveness is, and this is important for you because you have such great energy. I don't know if you felt it or sensed it. In asking your question the way that you did and how you embody who you are, you lit up this whole room. That's pretty impressive. And so you've got wattage. And as you are striving, most of you in a room like this, you're here, you have wattage. You've got powers. You got amp. And when you have that amp and you have that wattage and you are striving, see, you're burning. There's fuel, wherever it's coming from. And you have wattage. I'm using a lot of different metaphors on purpose. And as you're doing that, the thing is, if it's and it's frustration and fire, I always tell you, that same amount of energy and effort flipped to good feeling will make you magnificent. That same amount of energy put on grind, frustration, anger, impatience will terrify people. It will push other people away. It will push opportunities away. It will be that thing that for you, for your spirit, it will scare you. It will feel that dark. You've all felt that darkness. You're working really hard and it's dark and it's not good and you're kind of like, it freaks you out. But see, it takes the same amount of energy to be good or bad, same amount of energy to be kind or maleficent. It's input, it's energy. And I just go, I'd rather the energy be good as I'm working. That's why when I'm working, I put on music. Now I know it's simple, and you've already all seen, demonstrated, I have no rhythm at all, right? At all. But I'd rather have some rhythm in the room and feel good as I'm working and I'm writing than not. Now I could be monastic and I could turn it off and, oh no, it must be very cold in the room and there must be no music and I must torture myself along the way because that will show that I can do this. And then I will cold plunge immediately afterwards. And I will show myself that I can do uncomfortable things all day long. And I'm kind of like, whatever floats your boat, man, it's all energy. So I would rather just make sure that everybody in this room has enjoyment as they're working so hard. Because if you can enjoy it, you work hard, you'll work hard longer. If you don't, you'll burn out faster. And everyone's like, how do you not burn out doing all this, Brendon? Because I'm enjoying it. I taught myself to enjoy it. Even on the hard days, I got to pay my taxes and pay the bills. I got to talk to the teams. I got to do a lot of hard stuff that no one wants to do. I got to reply to all the emails when their family died. I got to reply to all the notes and the DMs when it's awful, when someone fell back into addiction, when they quit, when they cheated on somebody. Like not a lot of people would want my job. Not a lot of people would want his job. The reveal that people send to us, it's very heavy, it's very dark, it's very difficult. So we live in that too. There's no world in which we're not experiencing and sensing pain. In fact, people usually come to us because they have a lot of it.
Yeah.
What we have learned to do, though, is find enjoyment in that service, even though it's heavy. We found spirit in that service, even though it's very difficult. And when you can teach yourself to feel life, aliveness, to feel fulfillment, satisfaction, and to enjoy this journey, 2025 is going to feel like really magnificent for you. It's a complete shift. It's like we talked about this morning, the promise of like a reset. It's completely different. My friends do a lot of the same things I do. I'm having way more fun than them. I feel bad for them. I'm doing the same thing as you do. I'm having way more fun. Why? I allow myself that. I intend that. I'm going to bring the joy. I'm not going to have joy when it shows up. I'm going to bring the joy. It's my one long-standing statement. Everyone said, you come over to my house. Brendon, I'm coming to your house. What should I bring? I go, you don't worry about anything. What should I bring the wine? Don't worry about anything. What should I bring? Bring the joy. You bring the joy in life and everything feels differently, especially with your wattage. Woo! 2025, let's go. All right, give a round of applause.
That's awesome.
Erwin McManus, ladies and gentlemen.
And Brendon Burchard. Come on, guys. Can
Hey!
you say thank you?
Thank you so much for coming out today.